This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 418. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and I'm joined by my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
You know what makes stupid losses feel better, Brandon? Talking about it with good buddies like you and all the little flockers. I'm excited to break this down with you. Well, excited's the wrong word, but I do appreciate that we get this opportunity to go through the loss to the Bengals, but was it really that bad? Was it that bad?
It felt bad immediately after it happened because they were so close. 2 opportunities at the end zone in the final 3 minutes of the game, and you felt like of those 2 opportunities, they should be able to come away with enough to get the victory. And so I think that's why it bothered me so much after the game. And I think that's part of the reason why people were so emotional after the game too. I got an email from Lloydzilla via Discord saying, so far I've seen the following reactions: bench Geno, fire Pete, and my personal random reaction of the week, trade DK. And I think that, a few days out, those seem kind of silly. But after the game, I think you're mad, and it's, you're kicking stuff, and you want it to be fixed.
For sure. And I think for the average fan, when it's a offensive struggle fest rather than a defensive one, it's one thing when you lose a shootout, especially for most average NFL fans these days. Your team still look good in most people's minds.
Yeah,
right?
We scored a lot of points.
Yeah, when it's a defensive domination or a very good defensive game in the offensive struggles, I think that is something that really bothers people more than about anything. But you're right. We've heard all those reactions. They're all over the map. No doubt about it. It's easy to be knee-jerk right after the game. I get that for sure. But there's a lot of people that are still hanging on to some of those things, whether it's the bench Geno, which I think is probably the biggest subsection of fans after watching that Bengals game. But I know you went back and rewatched some of it. I went back and rewatched a fair amount of the All-22 and have some thoughts on Geno's play for sure.
Yeah.
But should we start with the defense? Should we start with the positive?
Sure. Yeah. Let's start with the somewhat positive.
Yeah. They had 2 rough drives to start the game, and then they locked it down for the rest of the game. And we actually got to see that secondary all together for a game. And man, against one really dynamic receiver and a very good quarterback, they were able to, hold them in check. And that was really impressive.
Yeah. And that's where I spent most of my time, especially even on the first watch through, was seeing just, how they were going to operate, because it was kind of fun going through, and maybe you had a chance to do this on your second watch through, but picking out where they were lining up Witherspoon, where they were lining up Jamal, how they might be shifting Jamal and Quandre, because both of those guys can move, when Julian Love was in, and how that changed the dynamic a little bit. And I think this is what Pete might have been trying for last year, along with Clint Hurt. And, obviously the addition then of Devin Witherspoon with Jamal Adams makes this defense look a whole lot different than it did just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's amazing what 2 dynamic players on the back end can really do for you. And it was a joy to watch. It was awesome seeing Jamal play his first full game back from the big injury and, look like a guy who can make plays and be a difference maker. And then the way that they move Spoon all over the place, they tested Reek a couple times, damn near ended up getting picked. So that was kind of fun. Trey Brown with a nice pick as well throughout the game. That was really cool. The pass rush was, it was there. It wasn't amazing, but they got after Burrow a bit. Yeah. Better than maybe say week 1 against the Dirty Rams. That's for sure. And the other thing we have to remember here and remind ourselves as fans is that this was a game against a playoff team. Make no mistake, Cincinnati will be in the playoffs this year.
Right.
I don't care about their start. I don't care about any of that stuff. Cincinnati will be in the playoffs as long as they don't have a catastrophic injury to Burrow or something along those lines, right? But that should give you some encouragement as well. That was on the road against a very good team.
Yeah, and Lloydzilla's email, it finished with that part too. We were beaten in a close game by the third best team in the AFC, which if you judge by the record, then you're going into it thinking that they're not among those teams. But this team, recovering from injury as it has, because Burrow hasn't been Joe Burrow through these first few weeks of the season. Now he's getting to be that guy. The defense is coming together for Cincy. And Lloyd says, yes, we had our poor moments, but we lost by 4 points to a top team. It happens. We were one completion away from winning.
For reals. And you spoke directly to the red zone offense right out of the gate in the instant reaction show, and going back and rewatching. I mean, you're not wrong, man. Like, that's where a lot of it was lost in this game. And then you have to talk about Geno's play. You got to talk about the offensive line's play. You got to talk about Waldron and what maybe he was doing. And then, Pete's clock management and just decisions at the end of the game. Like, I said it in the instant reaction pod. I do not get what the hell he was thinking there. I just don't. I get.
I'll help you with it. I'll help you with it if you don't get it.
Okay, well, that's great, because I'll tell you why I don't get it. I'll tell you why I don't get it as quickly. It's the idea of playing towards the way the team is playing that day, rather than playing and making decisions the way that the team is, that you want them to play, right? That you believe that they can play. And I think that's what happened at the end of the game, rather than being like, wait a second, defense has stopped dudes all second half. That's our best chance out of these two sides of the ball to hang your hat on, was the defense stopping the Bengals after the first possession, where they did not kick the field goal and went forward on fourth, which made me want to break all the TVs in the entire Gulch. And so they are hoping that the offense scores there, doesn't, kick the field goal, get within one, know that your defense is going to stop it, because the other part of it is that, the offense has done a great job of moving the ball up and down the field in the green zone and haven't been able to punch it in. So odds are you're going to be able to get back down there for a field goal. So why not play towards the way that your team is currently playing, not the way that you hope or wish that they play?
I was thinking about it in that way in the moment too, like that being a possibility. The reasoning that goes into the way that Pete decided to do it is that with 2:30 left to go on the clock, you were in position that one pass to the end zone and you are in the lead. And then you can let your defense try and hold that lead. Or you can kick the field goal, and you then have to ensure that you can get back there to at least kick another field goal. The worst case scenario, if you come away with 0 points, you still have that opportunity to get the ball back and then go back down and try and score a touchdown, which is what happened. So if you kick the field goal, you're kind of deferring on that possession, in the sense that you're deferring the opportunity to win on that possession, and saying that we're going to have to need another possession to be able to get the win, which I know it felt like it was a very high probability, but you're giving yourself essentially 2 chances at the win instead of deferring and then maybe making that second chance easier if you're able to get the ball back.
I don't know, man. I still can't stand the decision. I really can't. Not that it's the most egregious one in the world.
No.
There's so many other Pete Carroll fourth downs that have made me even more angry. But that was tough, the clock management at the end. But then again, if the offense clicks a little better throughout the game and cashes in on their opportunities, we never have that problem.
Well, and that's the problem with a game that is so close against a really good team, is that then you can go back and you can pick all of these different things. I counted off 4 things right after the game that I say if they didn't happen, that they get the win. Penalties played a big part. Geno Smith throwing interceptions played a big part. The offensive line getting dominated. And then, that a part of that went into it too was Shane Waldron and the personnel groups that he was using. They rolled out 3 wide receivers for a good part of this game, more than they did running out 2 and 3 tight ends. And I just don't see how in the second half, after your offense is getting stymied and Geno's under pressure, like, you don't find something different to do. They brought in Stone Forsythe as tight end on the very first drive of the game, where they rolled right down the field, and that was for 1 play. The fact that they varied their personnel formations on that very first drive, it wasn't a lot. it was like 5 different personnel groupings, essentially. It just seems weird to me that they would put that big emphasis on it in the first drive and have it work so well, and then get away from that even when Geno was under pressure.
Yeah, and you would think that rolling the tight ends out there after you're watching Curran have the struggles the way that he has. I mean, hats off to Jake Curran. Came in and has held the fort for a couple of weeks. That's more than you can ask for from a backup. I'm not even trying to bag on him, man.
And I guess he was hurt in the game too.
Yeah. And it finally caught up, right? And he had a very difficult time throughout the game. Geno he was under pressure somewhere around 50% of his dropbacks. That's massive. And so to go back to 11 personnel so heavy throughout the course of the game, I don't quite understand it, especially when the tight ends have been more consistent than JSN as a whole, and it helps you run the football a bit better, because it did seem like the run game dried up in the second half as well, and I think that's a little bit of personnel involved in that as well. And that just, again, it kind of goes back to this is our team this day, rather than this is the team that I want to see by week 13.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect with the coaching staff there right now. Maybe that's part of developing a team throughout the season that they know better than I, but it's tough. It's tough to watch.
I think that's a really good point to get into, though. How appropriate throughout the season do you do these little tweaks to try and become the team that you want to be? And do you maybe make some of those sacrifices and say it's worth, say, the development of Jackson Smith and Jigba to get him these reps in these situations throughout the game, and so that we have him to the position that we want him late in the season, because we know that he can be a really big part in this offense. And if that's a deliberate philosophy that you're in coaching decision that you're making, are you willing to maybe accept a really close loss in a game that you probably should have won, and it was just one aspect of it of many that the game was right there?
The game was right there. And I don't know. I mean, that's part of, running through a season as an NFL head coach and developing a team. There was a couple of plays that, going back and watching the All-22 with Jackson, where he was open, or he would have been open if him and Geno were closer to the same page. Like, there was a third down play where he ran kind of like an over from the right-hand side of the offense. He was lined up there, ran across the hashes, and then ended up curling behind the linebacker. And when he curled behind the linebacker, he curled right behind the linebacker. So now he's covered. So you can't throw it when he presents himself to Geno. Now, I'm sure that's his landmark. I'm sure that's where he's supposed to get to. I totally understand that. But in the process of getting there, Geno went through 2 reads, comes back to Jackson, and he's back on him early enough to where he's still running kind of across the hashes, wide open.
Right.
If he just turns his head, Geno puts the ball on it. Geno's looking dead at it. There was a couple of those plays for JSN and Geno in this game that really stood out. And then their lack of chemistry here early really stood out, obviously, on the interception. That was a bad ball. That was a really bad ball. But then again, go back and watch play. Where else was he supposed to go with the rock? The Bengals did a nice job in the secondary for the majority of this game. You have to give them some credit as well. It's not just that Geno played bad, although there were some bad plays. Mm-hmm. And then there were some plays that looked really bad that when you go back and really watch it, you're like, oh, okay. What else was he supposed to do?
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's one other I want to highlight, but the JSN Geno dynamic does seem to be off, and they've got a ways to go.
And that can be part of having more time playing together and developing that chemistry. Hopefully they're developing that in practice too. And when it comes to Geno's play, yeah, you can go back and you can pick out good parts. You can pick out bad parts. A good quarterback can have a bad game. A bad quarterback can have a good game. Yeah, no, it's really weird.
Mahomes never has bad games. Josh Allen never has bad games. They all are perfect every time they step on the field, Brandon.
And that's not even to compare Geno Smith to those guys. It's just that I think people just have a hard time categorizing Geno, or at least being okay with Geno, because you think of, okay, let's say Geno's a B quarterback out of the league. Like you named off some of those guys and say they're A quarterbacks. You want to have an A quarterback because it's better than having a B quarterback. But you can also win some big games with B quarterbacks, and especially when you have the kind of defense that the Seahawks seem to be building.
Nick Foles is a Super Bowl champion. Is he even a B quarterback?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you go. Now, is it more common to win with an A quarterback? Sure, it is. But yeah. I think having somebody like Geno Smith, who I guess if I were to try to really grade him and like put a letter grade on him as a player all last season and what we've got this year, A-, B+, right in there. That's a damn good quarterback, man. And you're only paying him half the salary that you would pay somebody like Russ. So a lot of people too, will bench Geno right now. You really think Drew's going to be any better
behind this offensive line?
Yeah, behind this offensive line, he was having to get the ball out so quick if he were to get the ball out. And then and the Bengals knew that, and they were jumping all the first reads.
Yeah.
Like they knew where the ball was going to go. And then in the second half, that's when I felt like you really saw Geno become way more hesitant.
Yeah.
Where, he'd kind of pump fake at something, then try to come back to it, and it just would be late. It was kind of a culmination throughout the game to where he got to where he was playing probably his worst football by the end of the game, just because of the circumstances. And the offensive line got progressively worse throughout the game too, as the Bengals found their groove.
Well, I think that this kind of illustrates a good opportunity anyway to talk about the dynamic between offensive line, play calling, bad execution, because I go back to the end of the game where there's some frustration. And I got an email with regard to this from one of our flockers. And, because when you have 2 straight possessions, when you're down there and you have 4 downs, so you have essentially 8 downs to try and score a touchdown. How do you place blame based on bad play calling, bad execution? And the hard thing is that they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because if you call plays based on the types of pressure you're seeing from the defense, and the Bengals were able to apply a lot of pressure, if you decide to go with personnel packages that don't allow you to make the most of that, you could have brought in Noah Fant, and you could have brought in another tight end, whether it's Colby Parkinson or Will Dissly. And that way, when they're coming off the line, they have an opportunity to chip the pass rusher and try and keep all those guys stacked in rather than allowing them outside the edge. And maybe Geno has a little bit more time to find the open guy. Maybe one of the tight ends can, after they chip, it's sometimes those guys, or they have them block for a little bit and then release, and then they're open because somebody loses track of them. So there are different plays that you can call in those situations that contributes. But then there's also the execution part of it. And yeah, if Geno drops back and hits his back foot and finds the right guy at the right time, the pass rush doesn't even make a difference. Or if your offensive linemen block their dude without getting beat immediately off the ball, then that's an execution issue. And if your offensive line is getting beat that quickly, it doesn't matter what play you have called because you can't execute it.
Right. So I think one of the plays that illustrated this the best to me, and it was maybe the one that I think us as 12s all got super angry through the game. It was earlier in the game, and they showed it on the screen. DK just doing a mailbox, right? Had his hand in the air, calling for the ball, streaking down the sideline, wide ass open. And you're like, golly, how in the world does Geno miss him? And then you go back and you watch the all 22. And basically the formation was something like there were no receivers to the right-hand side of the field. There was Dissly as the tight end in line. And then on the left-hand side of the field, DK was the outside receiver. Tyler did something underneath. And I think maybe the other tight end or the back went out in a route or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But Geno takes a snap, and because the offensive line has all the struggles that we've been talking about here, the tight end is told to stay in and chip. It not just chip, but like actually help and then release late, like you were talking about.
Right.
Then Tyler runs like a hook underneath, and that's bracketed. And then the running back comes out like fairly late, or maybe it was a tight end. I don't know. On the left-hand side. But Geno starts his read all the way over on the right-hand side of the field and looking towards where the tight end will eventually now come out and go for that route. Maybe on a regular day, that's a different timing there. Maybe Geno's looking to the right to try to keep the safeties maybe closer to the right-hand side of the field, thinking he might get back to DK. I don't know why. It was so weird the way that he either independently read that play out or the way that he's been taught to read that play out starting on that side of the field. Now, it was two high safeties as well. So what happened is by the time the Geno goes no to the tight end, which wasn't there at all anyways, no to Tyler underneath, and then looks to DK, DK's already had his hand in the air and is streaking down the sidelines. And now the second safety that was playing on that half of the field had started to rotate over. And you see Geno's feet get set to look that direction to DK. His arm comes back just a half a tick. And by then, it was too freaking late. It was too freaking late. Like, there's no way he was going to get that ball in there. Or maybe he does, but it's going to be dicey. Going to be awful dicey. So he declines it. He turns it down and then ends up taking the sack. If he reads it to the left first in that, and whether that's Waldron or Geno, or maybe not how that play is normally ran because offensive line isn't playing well or whatever it is, he catches DK right as he blows past the corner that's sitting down on the underneath stuff. And that's a completion. So it was like this beautiful mess of imperfection all wrapped into one play that led to a mailbox getting missed and all of us losing our mind and thinking that it's time for Geno to go and get Drew in there. Like, I don't know. I don't know how you can say that after that game. And not only that, but Brandon, this was a bad game for Geno. It was a bad game. Have you watched a Zach Wilson bad game? Have you watched, pick any bad quarterback and watch their bad game? How does that compare to a Geno bad game?
I watched a half of PJ Walker bad game filling in for the Browns against the 49ers. I still don't know how they were able to win that game other than the 49ers defense giving up penalty after penalty in the second half. I've watched bad quarterback play from Josh Dobbs with the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, it's a difference when you watch consistently bad quarterback play. It's obvious that this is not the situation that we're in. And I think that's part of the reason why I was so frustrated after the game, because I think there's just a tendency sometimes to generalize one bad game making a bad quarterback. And I feel like I see this with my kids. Like, you go out and you eat fast food and, you know, they don't want onions on their burger.
Yeah.
But then you end up with onions on your burger. And like, the solution isn't to, I don't know, go get another burger or pick them off yourself, or no, I need the employee who made this burger fired.
Yeah. They would be like that mentality. I've run into that dude at McDonald's before, actually, but it's interesting. Like, one of the commenters in the instant reaction show, I think, had said Geno's completion rate is 67%, and he's thrown 3 picks in 5 games. This isn't just one bad game, and I'd like to politely disagree.
67%?
My God, if I was your quarterback. But what is the bar there, by the way, when it comes to the completion side of things? Like, good God, 67 is fantastic. And then you look at that, and then he's like, well, three picks. And you're like, yeah. And 2 of them were in this game, the one bad game that we're saying that he had. So he had 5 touchdowns and 1 pick in the previous 4 games. He had 1 bad game, and now all the other games are bad? Like, game 1 wasn't good. Don't get me wrong. But good Lord, man. Like, what is the bar? Like, Russ had these games. God, can you remember every time Russ went to Green Bay and shit the bed?
The Mariners manager really needs to sit down Ken Griffey Jr. His batting average is only 280 this year.
Exactly. He only has 35 home runs so far. It is interesting. And I mean, I do get the passion in wanting the team to win and win big and win now. And especially when you see the 49ers losing to the Browns, you're like, oh my gosh, here we go. We get a chance to make that game up and all that stuff. I get it. I do. I get it. But there isn't a better option than Geno Smith right now. There is not. And not only that, he's a good option. He's still a good option.
He was either one pass away from having it be a clutch Geno game, a coaching decision away from it being a clutch Geno game. I mean, there's so many things, and that's even thinking about the two picks. Like, he had that opportunity twice at the end of the game, and it would be one thing if we didn't have the Lions game to go back to when he was on the road and in overtime and drove the team for a game-winning touchdown in overtime against a team that's the only game that they've lost. Which Geno Smith do we have? It's both.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit of both. And, you gotta temper things through a long season as well. I mean, again, if you're going to drop a game, let it be against a non-conference opponent, non-divisional opponent, all that stuff. That helps a lot. So I don't know, man. I guess I don't have the Geno outrage, but then again, I'm a bigger Geno fanboy than some people.
Yeah.
Which I think it also leads into the DK discussion. I know the DCH, he's over it. Our executive producer, Doug, he is over the DK thing. And
yeah,
as far as the outbursts, I get it. Like, I'm with you on that. I'm flat freaking over that crap. But I think the bigger problem in that game was when he gave up on the route that Geno threw the first pick on. Like, Geno expect him to carry that route inside, and he just stopped. He just stopped and gave up. Pete even said it.
Pete, after the game, said that DK's explanation was the receiver got so far inside of him that he was unsure what to do. I can kind of see it, but in the same feeling, it feels like Pete's doing what he can to protect DK, because it did. It looked like he quit. Even if he continues, even if he stops and then quickly continues on, then he's able to make the tackle where the guy intercepts the pass, because the guy had enough time to catch the ball, go to the ground, get up, and then run with it. And before DK was then getting blocked by Bengals defender. So he stopped enough and long enough for that to happen. Look, I've been a big DK defender too, and it's trending that way for me. It's still, I can't get to the point to where he's hurting the team enough that I would be willing to consider trading him, because DK Metcalf's really, really good.
He's really, really good. And we got to keep a couple things in mind. He's playing through a very painful injury right now. So if the production isn't quite what you like or what you would want to put up with those antics, keep that in mind. Keep in mind that it's hard to get him the ball as your deep threat when the offensive line is playing poorly. And, the one concern that I have about the DK situation is that we heard a lot about, in these last 2, 3, 4 months about Russ not being held accountable the same way that everybody else was held accountable. And clearly one of Pete's favorite players in the defense taking that a certain kind of way. The way that Pete has always talked about DK, I feel like he could end up in that sort of camp. Like, the idea that there hasn't been massive, tangible consequences that even as fans can see for his outbursts and what he did to that Bengals corner, which was Bush League. It was another Bush League hit. There's no need for it. There's just no need for it. And you're a grown ass man now. Like, you're done being a kid. You're in your mid to late 20s here. Like, you should be able to throttle that back a little bit. I don't know. That's the one thing that I wonder about, is Pete holding DK accountable enough for these things? And his answer about stopping that route kind of made me start thinking about that, because it was like, wait, I feel like we're making excuses for a guy quitting on a play. And that bothered me. It bothered me a bit.
Publicly, I think that's the way Pete tends to operate anyway.
For sure.
I sure hope that there's an accountability piece that maybe we're not seeing. I thought KJ Wright, listening to him on the radio this week, talking about specifically the Bush League play that you mentioned, because Pete's comment was about the whistle and how DK didn't hear the whistle or that sort of thing. And KJ was not buying that, saying that if the defensive player is not doing anything, then you don't have to do anything either. Like, you've both kind of, you're both out of the play.
Yeah.
There's no need to be aggressive if one guy has stopped being aggressive. And that's the situation here. Like, what are you doing?
We had a standoff. We were neutral. Like, just let it go, man. Like,
yeah, and it's okay.
I don't know. It's okay. So the DK stuff is frustrating, and it is starting to get on my nerves for sure. Not to the point of, is the juice worth the squeeze type of thing. Like, I still definitely think it is, but like you said, it's kind of trending that direction. At least for me personally, it sounds like for you too. So be interesting to see how he develops throughout the rest of the season. I do wonder too, like, if it were Jordan Brooks who was pulling this sort of stuff, would he just not be on the field? Because I feel like you would lose a significant amount of playing time if you were. And I love Jordan Brooks. I'm not even saying he's like lesser tier, but he's not the same level of star as DK.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think he's Devin Bush. Let's say it was him doing this crap.
Yeah.
He just would be inactive for the rest of the year. Like, that's how it would be. So I just don't understand what Pete's doing other than just talking to him. Oh, I talked to him about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
The accountability has to work. You have to know the player and the personality to know if what you're doing is going to work. And so it's one of those things where you kind of have to trust the coaches and how they know the players. That's why the whole thing with Russ never bothered me, essentially, because Pete handled him a different way, maybe because he had to. I know Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk, he talks about one of his favorite quotes. I think it came from Jimmy Johnson. If somebody falls asleep in the meeting and he's a borderline player, then that dude's getting cut. If Troy Aikman falls asleep in a meeting, I find a pillow.
Right.
Yeah. I need
there's a bit of that.
And he probably needs his rest.
And Pete does know those things, because think about it. With Russ, when he departed Pete, we know what happened. So Pete knew how to keep him in a mental state of flow that allowed him to function at a high level. And I think we all know that's in a hyper positive way, like just almost blocking out everything that is bad, even if it's truthful or whatever, a part of the reality. Like, that's how Russ functions best. And I think that was part of his mentality of being like, guys, just take it easy on Russ, okay? Like, because we want him at his peak mental performance. That's one of the things that Pete's all about, right?
It might be best for Pete to handle it that way and allow some of the offensive captains to handle DK another way. Like, if you don't think Tyler Lockett's behind the scenes talking to DK, I have to think as an offensive captain that both him, both Geno together are talking him through these types of things. And, there's an accountability piece that comes from the fans and the media too. Like, at some point you have to get tired of hearing your name be called out for stupid penalties from fans and media.
Yeah, I would imagine that would get old. I know it would to me, but maybe he doesn't care. That's good too. Like, you shouldn't really care what the, outside forces say about you and all that stuff.
No, but as it comes together, if you hear it from Geno, you hear it from Pete, you hear it from Tyler, you hear it from the fans, you get questions about it from the media. Like, at some point you go, well, maybe it's me and I should not push a guy after a play when he's not expecting it.
So what you're saying, to sum it up, is once is a trend, twice is a coincidence, three times is a you problem.
Right. Like, he needs to be introduced to this theory and realize it's a you problem for him.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones I ever picked up off of Cowherd. That's for sure. Like, it's a very true statement, I find anyways. I'm surprised it's not Diggs in his face, right? Like, out of all the dudes in the locker room, I feel like Quandre could walk up to any guy and be like, my man, this is changing now. And you're going to say no to Quandre?
I mean, like, I wouldn't. Or Bobby?
No.
I mean,
I don't know that Bobby's that vocal that way.
And I just don't know if the offense and defense, if they're, because I feel like the defense would have gone, well, it sounded like they tried going to Russ back in the day, and, Pete said to come through him. So it
maybe
almost
you get to the
seems
Marshawn point where you're just like, yeah, I just didn't catfish with them.
I suppose there's only so much you can do as a player before you kind of give up on having to be the coach or the disciplinarian or that sort of thing too. If it's not enough to me to where I would even think about trading him. It's a bummer that it impacts the team at important times. The cool thing was, in terms of the dumb penalty, it didn't necessarily impact the outcome of the game because Geno bailed him out by throwing that nice deep ball to Tyler immediately after.
That's all true. It's all true. But then again, maybe that deep ball comes a little deeper down the field because you've been down the, you didn't lose that 15 yards and you're closer to the red zone and, you don't lose by 4. Who knows? But a lot of if and buts when it comes to this game. I think everybody agrees that going back and looking through it, it's a very nuanced situation for the offense as to the struggles. It's not just Geno is bad or Waldron can't call the right formations or Pete makes bad in-game decisions. It was like, 30%, 33% of all those different things mixed together. And then it was kind of like a negative feedback loop. And that's the way that I look at it anyways. And I do think that a way to get right from something like that is to play a team like the Arizona Cardinals.
An Arizona Cardinals team that is 1-5 coming up to your house, a Cardinals team that you've beat by 10 points the last 2 times, and still no Kyler Murray, although he did get activated off of injured reserve or recall. Sure. He was able to come back to practice this week, which I would have a hard time believing that after his injury that you would come back to practice and then immediately go into a game. Like, they have 3 weeks. He's in this 3-week window of practicing before they have to essentially make a decision on whether or not to activate him or shut him down for the entire year. And that's the window that opened for Kyler today. Budda Baker, that one would seem more likely to me as a possibility because he's coming off of a hamstring injury, but still coming off injured reserve, practicing. Those are their 2 biggest names. And that's the thing. Those are their 2 biggest names. So it absolutely makes this a get right game when those are the dudes that you would be worried about and they're just being activated off of injured reserve.
For sure. I totally agree with you about the probabilities here. I think it's virtually none that we see Murray, and, possibility you see Budda, and he's a fine player. You can't take anything away from him. I'd be curious at what point you bring Murray back at all. But then again, this Cards team, you say, well, there's no one dude that you really fear or anything like that. Right. But you watch him play and that defense flies around. It's well coached. They play hard. Kazir White, their middle linebacker, number 7, he's damn good. He's a very fine football player. I don't think that this is going to be a steamroll game. This could be a game where, the offense maybe even struggles early until they finally find their rhythm. But they've played very competitive football. And Josh Dobbs, he's not good, but he's not garbage either. Like, I would say at this point, low tier starter, high level backup right there.
Yeah.
Like,
he's all right.
Not bad.
The thing that I worry about with Josh Dobbs, the guy has some wheels. Like, he gets outside the pocket.
Medium wheels.
But he makes the decision and he goes. And I think that part of that too, the dude's like a rocket scientist, or he has something to do with space engineering was his major in college. Yeah. So he's a super smart guy. And the other thing that he's had going for him, the Arizona Cardinals have started the same offensive lineman for the first 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, that certainly helps a lot. And they call plays that fit his strengths as well. I'd say defensively, if you're Clint Hurt, you're looking at this game much like you did the Panthers game. He's much closer to, that Panthers Bryce Young type offense of the dinks and the dunks and all of that stuff and keeping things short. Don't make mistakes. and you really don't have to worry about too much downfield. I mean, Hollywood Brown can break one here or there, but I think that with the corners that we have, I don't think that there's going to be a lot to worry about there. Play up, single high, get after it. Let's blitz a bunch again, because Dobbs, when he does get a little bit of pressure, the ball doesn't come out clean. He throws a lot of ducks, and unlike Peyton Manning, he doesn't throw a lot of ducks for touchdowns.
Well, I mentioned the offensive line and their ability to at least play together through these first 6 weeks. It doesn't mean they're great. I mean, their offensive line they struggle with picking up stunts. And so you're going to have opportunities to be able to get after Dobbs. Yes, they've got Brown. I mean, we should also mention Michael Wilson, who's their rookie, their third round rookie, who's playing pretty well this season. They've got Rondale Moore, who they're probably going to need because of Connor being injured and out. Their running game is going to be severely impacted by that. But Rondale Moore is one of those guys to where he's kind of a gadgety type player, a la Deebo Samuel, to where you can use him out of the backfield, you can use him out of the slot, and he can be kind of, gadgety type player for this Cardinals offense. And so they have some things that you absolutely have to worry about. It's just with the defense playing as well as they are. I was looking at the stats, and okay, they haven't allowed the least amount of rushing yards in the NFL, but they're like top 5 or top 6. But they have allowed the fewest yards per attempt, 3.2 yards per attempt, which is good for first in the entire league.
It's impressive. And at this point of the season, I think you have to say that it's real. Their prowess at stopping the run. And I see this Cards team, and especially with Connor out, because I do respect Connor quite a bit. I can't remember who the backup is. I forget his name every time. I think he's 28 is the number. But, he's a guy. And he's out there doing his thing, and good for him. He's an NFL player. But I don't think that they're going to be able to get the run game going really at all. And without that, having to rely on Josh Dobbs down in, down out to make the right decision, and not just make the right decision, but then have the talent to execute it, you're going to have some opportunities. I think Spoon gets a pick in this game. I think Reek gets a pick in this game.
I don't even think that they have 28 anymore, because the guy wearing 28 plays backup strong safety. So they've got Keontae Ingram, and they've got Amari DeMercado.
That's the guy I was thinking of, DeMercado. Yeah.
And I think he'll probably take majority of the carries, but
he has been.
Even still, I worry more about Rondale Moore with the football than I do their running back.
Oh, who? Deebo Samuel's ultra light? Get out of here. I don't worry about Rondale Moore.
I worry about him more. I'm not that worried about DeMercado.
Okay. So, no worry about DeMercado, and, a tiny bit of worry for Moore.
Yes. Accurate.
Okay. That's fair. But I think that the defense should be able to keep these guys really well in check in terms of the scoring. The offense, they'll get it together, man. Now, I do wish that we had Abe Lucas back for this game. It sounds like no-go for this week.
Based on how strong of a no Pete was when he was asked about it on Monday, I'm not sure when we see Abe Lucas back. And that worries me.
It ought to. Yeah, every time I hear old knee, it's just his old knee that he's trying to get figured out. Again, I just have Jesse Williams flashbacks. You're just like, oh, no. He was good for a hot second, and then he was just gone forever.
Yeah. And for those unfamiliar with Jesse Williams, because that was the 2014, 2015.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
He was somewhere in there. Anyway, he was an Alabama defensive lineman and projected to be first-round talent. He ends up falling to the 5th round. The Seahawks pick him up in the 5th. And essentially, he shows a little bit in preseason, but what did we barely saw any snaps.
He played a couple games.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but then we never saw him again.
And then he was just gone because of old knee. I hate that.
I know. So
I love Lucas.
So when we talk about having flashbacks to that, that's what we worry about. We don't want that for Abe Lucas because we saw so much flash from him in year one.
After watching Curran this last game, how is Jason Peters not the answer? Or at least
Stone Forsythe.
Sure.
I mean, just to see on the right side, he held down the left. Okay.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I mean, maybe it's just difficult for him since he primarily plays over at left tackle, whereas, Jason Peters, with all of his experience and everything, he'd be able to kind of do whatever. But they've been reluctant to pull that trigger up to this point. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I mean, I'm to the point to where I wonder if Jason Peters can play some left guard if Damian Lewis is going to be out another game. Like, I don't know if talk about guys that
is he not back?
Damian Lewis was back as a limited participant. Charles Cross, limited participant, both of them ankle injuries. Phil Haynes, limited with a calf. So those were your offensive line injuries. Jake Curhan did not participate with his ankle at tackle. And Evan Brown didn't participate with a hip injury. So all of our guys who are starting offensive linemen did not participate or were limited participants.
That's legit scary against any NFL team. I don't care if it's the Cards or the Eagles. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's scary either way. But we have seen them, against the Lions and against the Panthers and the Giants. They held their own and they did well, and they were able to put together. Andy Dickerson did a fabulous job. The Evan Brown news, that's super scary to me because he's been damn good. Although we do have Olu, right? And I do have a lot of faith in Olu, so I'm good there. The Phil Haynes calf injury, whatever, man. I'm totally fine with Bradford. I love the way that he just destroys people in the run game. Now, does he struggle mightily in the pass game at times? Yeah, he does.
Times, yeah.
He might get better. He might not. I don't know. But I do like him in the run game. Phil Haynes doesn't do anything remarkable. He's fine. And I'm not even saying he's bad. He's just not remarkable. The Dame Lou injury, though, playing without him this last week, I think we felt that more than maybe we thought going into the game.
And that's why I wonder if Peters at the guard spot would be an upgrade rather than having Haynes try and switch from right to left and dealing with an injury. It's tough that you have to rely on that amount of depth, and you're thinking, well, maybe a 42-year-old big man can take that spot. Obviously, he's had a Hall of Fame type career, so you would hope so. The thing with Stone Forsythe, we saw him so much at right tackle in the preseason. I have a little bit more confidence that he can handle making the switch over to that side after playing the left side. So there's so many opportunities for how they could configure this offensive line. One, it goes back to Andy Dickerson and how he's been able to operate, moving these guys around and still have them be productive. But it also, there's a lot of decisions that you could try and make because, do you bring in Olu? Do you move Evan Brown over? The hip injury for him, I don't know if I'm as worried about, because he just seems like one of those guys that, he might need a day off like DK with his ribs, but come game day, he's going to find a way to make it on the field. I get a sense that he's that type of guy.
He's got a warrior mentality, man. I genuinely like Evan Brown. Like, every time I hear him speak, he's just the goofy offensive line, but smart in just everything I love about offensive linemen. Like, he's perfect. He's just perfect. So we'll see if he's able to make a go of it. It sounded like Sharps was, or Charbonnet was nursing a hamstring injury as well. So that's a little scary. What I think out of Walter, what I'd like to see in this game, Brandon, is I'd like to see him move the pocket a bit more. Like, why don't we do that more with Geno, who is functionally mobile? And not only that, but often you say that, like, move the pocket. And that always means for a right-handed quarterback that you're rolling to the right in boots and things like that, right? But that's the thing about Geno, is that we've seen through his Seahawks tenure that if you get him moving to the left, he's darn good that direction as well. So you're not limited to just half the field like you are for a lot of these guys that you say, well, they're struggling, let's roll them out, limit the options on the field, cut the field in half. You don't have to do that for Geno, but still get him moving and maybe help alleviate some of their pressure.
And who are you worried about in this Cardinals secondary? Anybody?
No, I just checked with myself again and still no. Yeah.
I mean, if Budda Baker is standing on the sidelines, does that bring enough to the guys that are actually on the field to elevate their play? I could argue it doesn't.
I think that would be a pretty safe argument for sure.
Like Buda Baker's really good. I just don't know if he's that good.
I will say, I do think this Jonathan Gannon guy could be good. He is a clear upgrade over Kingsbury. And
when you see so many bad coaches come through Arizona and you kind of get a glimmer of, oh, the Cardinals are actually kind of playing like they still have kind of the same level of talent, but you see them playing better. You can attribute that to the coach. And it does kind of worry you a little bit. We saw it. The 49ers for years had a string of bad coaches until Harbaugh came around, right? And
then a little bit of a string after the Chip Kelly and the Tom Sula years after too. Those were a little rough, all that stuff. But I think one of the more fascinating things in this league is going to be Kyler Murray coming back for this team, because number one, like, are you trying to tank, which it doesn't seem like they are, but get that higher draft pick. Okay. So there's one question, but the other is, this is a team that doesn't seem super sold on him to begin with, and a new coach who I think is getting the most out of Josh Dobbs. And so when Kyler comes back, he doesn't have that college Kingsbury offense that he's used to. He's going to have to go out there and run a regular NFL offense. And we've never seen him do it. Never. And I've never been a Kyler guy. Even if he hadn't been a Cardinal, I just didn't think that he was going to be it at quarterback, and it's proven out to be that way. And then you take him and put him in a different style of play that he's not maybe suited for. I don't think that gets any better.
No, but I think that you then have an opportunity once he comes back to throw him out there and see what he does. And you have the luxury. They're kind of in a similar luxury situation as the Seahawks were last year, because one of their top picks is the Texans pick, having made that trade last year. So they can go out there and play as hard as they can, and they can still potentially have a top pick with Houston.
I don't know if that Houston pick is going to be a top 10 pick, man. They're playing pretty well. Stroud's been lights out, and who's the new coach? D'Amico. He's doing good work down there. Defense is balling.
I don't think that they're concerned about picks.
True.
Although maybe Bidwell is.
Yeah, hard telling not knowing on that one.
Bad ownership can make its way through an organization too, just like bad coaching.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, the Cardinals have been trying to overcome a Bidwell yearly forever.
Well, with this game coming up at home, it feels like a game you should win. It almost feels like a must win now that you're 3-2, because you fall back to 3-3. Then you're talking about being in the same category with the Rams, and you don't want to be tied with them after already having lost a game to them. So to stay competitive within the division, within the NFC, you have to come out and beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, especially when you're at home. And it does make this game feel more meaningful that way.
You're 100% right, man. This is a big time game. This means more than the Bengals game. And obviously it's against a lesser tier of opponent. But divisional game, man, got to get it. You're right. You can't risk ending up tied with the Rams record wise and then having those tiebreakers go against you later in the year. You can't do it. You got to have this one.
After this game, yes, you have back-to-back home games, but then you face that Cleveland Browns team that just beat the 49ers. And while their offense, it's not great, that defense, it looks pretty tough. So, yeah, you don't want to go 3-3 and then have you go from a must-win game to a really, really must-win game. You want to go and win the games at home that you're supposed to win.
You betcha. And I think it will be a victory, and I'm excited to watch it coming up here this Sunday, man.
Let's get to the second half of the show. All right, Adam, I want to go back to the defense, where I enjoyed our conversation in the first half because I am very excited about the potential for this defense. And I have to wonder if this defense is really becoming or trending toward being an upper tier defense in the league. What is it going to look like over these next 4 games against what you would consider mediocre offenses, I guess, to be generous, although Ravens probably a little bit higher than mediocre. But Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, Commanders. What are your expectations over this stretch with the Seahawks defense?
16.5 points a game.
That's your expectation.
Yep. That's my expectation, man. They have set the bar now. And like you said, those short of the Ravens, middling offenses, and even the Ravens, they have their struggles in consistency in scoring and that sort of thing. Even with the Lamar, who's great, and all their skill players. But yeah, man, 16.5 points a game, like a fairly dominant effort.
We're kind of going to need that too, because as we move forward, those teams that I mentioned, I'd say not great defenses, but better defenses. So if they want to prove that they're a playoff team, they have to be able to score against this level of defense and have a defense that, like you said, holds them to 16.5 points.
And they will. I think they absolutely will. We saw that they scored at will against a Lions defense that is surprisingly good. Well, maybe not surprisingly, but it's very good.
Yeah.
And if you could do that, you should be able to roll that out against just about any competition, especially the likes of the Commanders. And I say the Browns, I know their defense is really, really good, but I haven't looked at their schedule either. Like, other than the Niners, who have they played? I don't know.
So the first week of the season, they held the Bengals to 3 points. That was with an injured Joe Burrow, but still 3 points to that Bengals team. They allowed 26 to the Steelers, which that one looks bad at this point. They shut down the Titans, only 3 points. They allowed 28 to the Ravens, and then the 49ers. So they've kind of been inconsistent.
Yeah. And that Bengals matchup the first week, that's when Joey B was at his worst. So take that for whatever it's worth. And yeah, giving up that much to the Steelers. I mean, Kenny Pickett's downright awful, and they are not consistent running the rock. They have one player. It's Pickens or bust. That's it. I don't know, man. I'll put it out there now. They're a little overrated. They're a little overrated after hearing that, Brandon. And so we'll start stoking that fire here a couple weeks early, because apparently we're the worst. We'd fall for this Cards game as a trap game.
I think that their ability to prove it against the Niners, but shoot, if the Niners field goal kicker can just put it through the upright at the end of the game, then maybe we're not as high on this Browns defense.
I will tell you this. Christian McCaffrey has been the straw that has stirred the 49ers drink.
Yeah.
And him going out, that changed everything. And some people point at the Debo injury too. And I mean, Debo's a heck of a player. It's just, I think CMC means that much more to them. So trying to function without him, when he leaves during a game, I think that was a massive struggle for the offense. You saw Purdy finally freaking struggle. Thank God. We haven't reveled enough in a freaking 49ers loss. Eat crap. Yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess with the McCaffrey injury, though, it sounds like it's more of a pain tolerance issue is how they're putting it.
I don't know, man. You start talking about needing MRIs and things like that, and obliques, like, I don't know.
So they have a game this weekend, and then they have their bye. This injury could come at a pretty good time for them to just sit him this week, then have the bye week, and then have, if it's not as serious, that he comes back healthy. So you're not wrong about him being the guy who stirs the drink for that team. I think that without him, even with having Kittle and Debo and Ayuk, I think it's not going to be the same with Eli Mitchell back there than Christian McCaffrey.
I think they become a plausibly beatable team on the regular without CMC, whereas with him, they look pretty damn good.
The dang Rams looked okay against the Cardinals. Didn't even put up much of a fight.
That's not true. It was close going into the third quarter, man. Cards were up right before half, and then Dobbs threw that stupid pick six, and then it all unraveled. They were leading with like 2 minutes to go in the first half. They were up.
With the way that game was going, I had no reason to feel like the Cardinals could pull that game out.
I did. I had a reason to feel that way, and it's because I hate the catfish Rams so much. That was the reason.
Yeah, well, I wanted that to happen, but then I knew I'd be disappointed. So I didn't want to set myself up for disappointment.
Well, that's the difference between me and you. Apparently, I'm just a glutton for punishment that way. I don't know. But enough about those stupid guys. I've had enough of division rival talk. We got enough Cardinals crap to deal with this week, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about our members of the flock who went to getintheflock.com. They're helping to support the show. We've got our executive producers, DCH, Rebecca Christensen, Brian Shaw, JC Schilling, and Jake Burdine, who is in because Jake came in.
Guess who's back?
Jake is back.
Back again. Yeah.
He came in.
Back. Jake is back. Jake is back.
Do you have the whole rest of those lyrics? Can we keep this going?
Nah. That's all I got.
Okay. I kept thinking that you were going to stop, but you just kept going. I wanted to see how long this played out.
It came over me, man. Yeah.
Jake is in with $300 via @Hawkra on Venmo. And yes, if you're like Jake and you support us at $25 per month for your annual donation, you drop it all at once. You know what? You're going to be an executive producer for the next 3 months. So a big thanks to Jake. And Jake has an email.
Oh, awesome. Okay, because I've missed Jake.
I know. I feel like I have too. The last time we went to a game together was down in Frisco, and we haven't been to a game since. He's in Seattle, so I don't know what's going on. Why we never see each other anymore? But I feel like he's trying to avoid me.
It's fine.
It's fine.
I mean, I'm only half offended.
Jake says, first and foremost, I want to give both of you a hearty Go Hawks and express my deep gratitude for the Hawkra cleansing your podcast provides every week. Renewing my Better at Life donation is the least I can do to support the phenomenal work you guys are doing. I've been super excited about this year's uptick in episode frequency and the diversity in your format. The longer deep dives and the shorter quick hits offer something for every 12 out there, regardless of how jam-packed their schedule might be. The breadth and depth of your coverage keep the Hawkra clean and my fandom at an all-time high. Sure, the whiners may have mortgaged their future to peak in the first quarter this year, but when it comes to building sustained dominance, I'll take this young elite roster every time. Thanks, Denver. In closing, thank you for all you do. You're both better at life than Skip Bayless and an essential part of my Seahawks fandom. Looking forward to many more episodes as y'all close in on 500.
Well, thank you, man. Appreciate you, Jake. And you're an essential part to the show. Like, Jake's been with us for a good long time. And yeah, that's maybe why I started singing when I heard he was back. I just got excited, you know?
Well, Jake's always been there with us. It's just, he comes in with his annual donation every year, and that's when we hear from him.
Exactly.
He's not going to be at the Commanders game either because he's got like some other thing going on.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like an excuse that I may or may not accept.
It sounded like an important excuse. I don't know.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I felt that way initially, but now I'm starting to question it myself.
I mean, it better be as good of an excuse as like Brian when he couldn't meet up with us for the game where he's like, well, I fly airplanes and like, so, I had to do important airplane things. And it's like, yeah, we need those in the sky. Like they need to stay there. So that's good. I can accept that one.
Well, we are at 338 members of the flock. Just two more, Adam, to get to 340. That's like Thomas Rawls times 10. We got to get to Rawls times 10. I feel like we're just two people away. So if you go to getintheflock.com, they have an option now where you can go and you can join and just to be there. It's to follow it. And I guess you get our emails and that sort of thing. So you don't even have to spend money when you go there now.
That's awesome, man. I love it.
So getintheflock.com. Also, if you're going to getintheflock.com and you have to drive through Kellogg, Idaho to get there, mention the Little Flockers discount at Guaranteed Barbecue. Get your 12% off and get yourself some good barbecue.
Yeah, I was going to say, get yourself good and full, man. Yeah, the portions are ridiculous. They're so good.
So good. All right.
So good. I'm hungry already. And then you start talking about Guaranteed Barbecue and I'm just like, gosh, dang it, man. My stomach just had a revolt. like while we were sitting here, man.
My brain had a revolt last week when I just skipped over the Pick'em League standings. I guess because it was a bye week, I didn't think that we actually had people turning in their picks. But it turns out that they did, and I feel bad for skipping over the fact that we had 6 people pick 10 games correctly. We've got Woolen with my homies, you Amati bro, Get the Flock Out of Here, the DCH, Unlimited Flocker, and Bayou Hawk, all with 10 games picked correctly, which brings it down to the tiebreaker for week 5, Adam. The DCH had the score, tiebreaker, gets the win. Our executive producer, the big winner for week 5.
Hey, that's awesome. Congratulations to Doug. Yeah, he deserves a dub for sure.
And then from a 6-way tie in week 5 to a clear winner in week 6, 13 picks correct, DK's Poop Cart.
That's fantastic. What a week. 13?
13. Damn. When you have the upsets that you do, for one, and I have on good authority that DK's Poop Cart picked the Seahawks Bengals game properly and appropriately. But then, gosh, you think of the upsets, right? The Eagles went down. They had their first loss. The Niners had their first loss. Yeah, there were some tight games but I mean, between those 3 games alone.
Yes.
That must be the 3.
That must be it. I don't know, man. Hell of a performance in a clear winner for week 6, which is a better winner than, say, I don't know, like Doug in week 5, who had to rely on tiebreakers. So better win. You got to do better, Doug. Much better win than
Be
Doug.
more dominant. If we're being competitive, DK's Poop Cart had a better win than Doug.
Yeah.
Also, it vaulted DK's Poop Cart into the top spot in the Pick'em League, 67 points ahead of Can You Digs It. Great Rolls of Fire at 65, and that's along with Luke Sim and Waldron's Cauldron rounding out the top 5.
All right, I do have a special request from here on out. Whenever you say "Can you digs it," it's got to be "Can you digs it." You got to do it every time.
From here on out, I'm going to be doing it all year because I feel like folks that are in the top of the standings going into the bye week generally tend to hang around for a little bit too.
For sure. That's why it's going to be fun to make you say that week in and week out. It's going to be great.
It'll be fun for me too.
Yeah.
It's just have to make sure we're not recording at nap time at my house, and we'll be fine.
Oh, if you are, you can just point at me and I'll jump in.
Adam said I had to do it.
Yep.
Oh, you mean you'll take over? Okay. You got
I'll take over. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's run through the picks for this week 7. Jacksonville at New Orleans.
Jacksonville.
Atlanta at Tampa Bay.
Tampa.
Buffalo at New England.
Buffalo.
You know, it's weird. I heard all week about how these issues, trade DK, bench Geno, fire Pete, and then nationally, I didn't hear any of that. It's weird. You would think that stories that were that pervasive, if it was that egregious about the Seahawks loss to the Bengals, we heard about it nationally. Instead, they're talking about how Bill Belichick should be fired because he's only won 1 game and he's a 2% favorite to win against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and rightfully so at this point.
Cleveland at Indy.
You know what? Screw it. I'm taking Indy. Minshew magic.
Hey.
That way I can root for Minshew and it'll be fun.
Risk pick game, too. Only 20% going with Indy.
Yeah, there we go. I knocked it out.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even like to hint it to you and see where you go with it. Detroit at Baltimore.
Ooh, that's a hell of a game. I'm gonna be glued to that one. I'm going to. Detroit's gonna win their division, so it doesn't really matter if they lose the Ravens. I'm going Detroit.
Las Vegas at Chicago. The battle of the backup quarterbacks with Brian Hoyer and whoever backs up Justin Fields.
Whoever backs up Justin Fields. Go Bears.
Okay. Another risk picking game.
Actually, that's stupid. I should go Raiders. Max Crosby could win that game just by himself.
There you go. Yeah. It's 86% going with the Raiders.
Okay.
Washington at the Giants. Another coach that is being talked about as being fireable.
Who, Dable or Rivera?
Dable.
He didn't give him that contract.
I know. It's just, I feel like I heard more about firing Dable than Pete Carroll last week.
That's true. Is there an option of who cares? Or do I have to pick one? I'll go Commanders.
I think if I skip it, it gives me an error.
Well, this game's an error.
82% going with Washington, 18 with the Giants.
Yeah.
I'll give you the Giants. It just feels like fun.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, jerkface.
Well, if you don't care, then I'll pick for you.
I said I'd take the Commanders.
Oh, okay.
I'll take the Commanders. Yeah. I'm rolling with Barry the Commander this week.
Pittsburgh at the Rams. Ooh, should be a lot of fans there in LA.
Yeah, that's going to be a home game for Pittsburgh. God, the Rams are these are two very mediocre teams. Yeah, I'm going Pittsburgh.
Another risk pick. 15% going with the Steelers.
Whatever. My picks have been crap one way or the other, so change it up.
I don't blame you. My heart is with Pittsburgh too. I think I'd have to pick. I think I'd have to go with the risk. That is a risk pick game for me.
Yeah, and nephew Riker will like it. Yeah.
Green Bay at Denver. Oh, this is battle of the YouTube streamers with Green Bay and Denver with That's Good Sports.
It's a Grassy Perna matchup, huh? Okay. I'm going Packers for sure. That's not just the Broncos are terrible. It's that Jordan Love is going to have some ups and downs throughout the season. I realized last week was not a good week for him. I expect a bounce back game.
Kansas City at home against the LA Chargers, who are struggling.
Is it in KC, though?
It's in KC.
I feel like the Chargers do fairly well there, like randomly.
Or is that just Denver?
I think it's Denver. You're right. KC. They brought back Mecole.
Coin flip game, Sunday night football between the Miami Dolphins and Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like I know which way you're going to lean on this one.
Dolphins. The Eagles will not be able to keep up with points. Their offense is not good, man.
Oh my gosh, you're picking in a coin flip game. You are not picking against the hated Miami Dolphins?
No, I'm trying to pick right. Yeah.
For a change.
My hate pick was the Steelers over the Rams, so I already burned it.
You burned it. San Francisco at Minnesota, Monday Night Football.
I'll take San Francisco.
You want to say combined points for that one as tiebreaker?
Sure. 42.
I usually give you 50 every week, but I figured I'd ask you this week.
No, I appreciate it. 50 is a good number. I'm comfortable with that.
Just so there's something there and it's not zero. And it's more likely.
Yeah.
All right. We do have an update on Pick'em from Hugh. Says, hi, Brandon. Evie hasn't had a chance to email, but wants you to know that Best is bad and picked the Bengals last week, and he needs to do better. She says to change his pick and tell him to size up for a Trey Lance jersey.
I love it. I love it. See, you can't sneak one of those past Evie people. Don't try to do it. You can't pick against the Seahawks and pick them. You can't do it. It's a rule.
She's our Pick'em League overlord for a reason. She watches for this sort of thing in weeks where maybe the Seahawks don't play up to expectations. And yes, she will find you. And that pick has already been changed back to the correct pick because it on a first time.
Understand?
You know, maybe you're just going down the home team and you forget to look for Seattle and you pick it by accident. That's why we allow for some discretion, especially with this first whiff.
First whiff, that's fine. But Evie has a very particular set of skills, and she will find you. So don't screw up.
Don't screw up. And if you want to come in as part of our mailbag segment, send us an email, gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com, or you can go on to seahawkerspodcast.com and click the contact link. Adam, what do you say we get into some do better and better at life?
All right, hit it.
If you watch the Monday Night Football game between the Chargers and the Cowboys, we're talking about the fan. And just by saying the fan, you should know who the person I'm talking about. It's Marianne Doe. Marianne is more of a fan than me, I think. And she's probably a bigger fan of her team than you are of yours, at least in terms of outward emotions, because she is such an emotional fan, Adam. It actually led people to wonder out loud on the internet if it was some sort of an act, like a paid act. Like, there's no way a person could root this hard and be this emotional about her team without getting paid to be this emotional. And I understand it. Look, it's important to have some skepticism. The skepticism around Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, good skepticism. Because, yeah, probably an act, especially since they're both represented by the Creative Artists Agency, or CAA. They set up stuff like that. We see this fishy thing go on from now and again. But Marianne Doe, to accuse someone like her who just appears to have a very deep set of emotion and discretion around the game. Gosh, you had people go out and find like some old picture of her in a Vikings jersey and go, oh, look, here she is as wearing a Vikings jersey. And it turns out, yeah, she used to live in Minnesota and she rooted for the Vikings and had her picture taken on a Vikings jersey. Now she lives in LA. For us to spend so much time that you have to go and do all this detective work, we saw so many groups within the media breaking this down as if this is something important and needs to be looked into as to whether or not she might be a plant or a paid actor that got so much camera time. No, she got so much camera time because her expressions on TV were charming. And so for everybody in the sports media that seemingly feels the need to break this down and dig into it, do better.
All right, man. Then I guess I'm doing better because Marianne Doe, what is her husband John sitting back at home, like kicking his feet up? Like, already that's a generic name right there. Marianne Doe, get out of here. That's not her name. This woman is a crisis actor. This was a false flag fandom operation there in LA to try to convince all of us that somebody gives a crap about the Chargers after they ripped them away from San Diego and stabbed all those fans in the heart. Mr. Spanos. Spanos is behind all of this. Marianne Doe, I want to know your real name, your real fandom, and where you went to acting school. That's my thought process on it.
Here's the thing that I think is the more likely situation is that the NFL, they found a fan in the crowd that they could put the camera on to take the spotlight off of all the criticism of putting Taylor Swift reactions on the TV so often. And so now we're talking about Marianne Doe and how she might be a paid crisis actor and not talking about how much TV time Taylor Swift is getting anymore. See, that's how you take that out of the media cycle.
Look, I'll tell you what right now, I was dead wrong. Marianne Doe is a hero to this country. If this is the fact that she was there to take our attention away from Taylor Swift and the Swifties there for a minute, I will take it. She is a scholar and a amazing woman and is a national treasure. And I'm sorry for my previous comments.
Who you got this week?
All right, man. My do better this week. It's for a mouse. It's for a mouse, Brandon. Right before we hopped on to the podcast here, Britt decided that it was time to do the, fall cleaning of the wood stove in our kitchen. That's where we cook all of our food on the wood stove that heats our house. It's got an oven built in. And it clogs up over time. So we get the shop vac, and we take some panels off, and you vacuum the whole thing out, and it's working great. It's working great. But unfortunately, about halfway through vacuuming out this wood stove, the vacuum just wasn't working very well. And the dust was pouring back down the pipe, and you're like, what in the world is going on here? I don't understand. But we get it kind of done, and Britt's like, we take it out and empty the ash into one of the flower beds or something, for the nutrients. I was like, yeah, sure. I go out there, I open the top of the vacuum. And what's in there? A live ass mouse. He's running around in the middle of the vacuum. And I hurry up, put the lid back on. So I'm like, what do I do now? Do I kill the little guy? Was he living in the stove? Was he living in the vacuum? Brittany had emptied the vacuum before she started the process. So was he living in the pipe in the vacuum? I don't know. He's a mystery. He scared the shit out of me for half a second and stop living in my vacuums or my wood stove or the hobo shack, wherever it is that you were. Little mouse, do better.
Ollie, come get this mouse.
He don't care. He'll chase the squirrels for all over Helen gone outside. And then we had one come in through the doggy door, and he just kind of lifts his head and he's like, hey, what's up?
What?
Like, why inside? Do you not take care of this stuff, man? Come on, Ollie.
I guess you're going to have to get Ollie a cat friend to hang around the house too. You gotta take care. If he won't take care of the mice. You say that out loud to Brittany, I swear to God, I will drive up to the Flathead and strangle you with your microphone cord. Don't you dare. Does she want one?
Does she want one? Yeah, she always wants a cat. Yeah, she wants like 10 cats. Of course she wants one. I don't want a cat. I don't like cats. No,
let it live outside. It doesn't, just put the food out.
Oh, you think that's sticking? With the first night, it gets down to like 5 below. Oh, but what happened to kitty pants? He's going to freeze himself. Beep-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. Then he's going to get eaten by a mountain lion. I'm going to have to deal with that emotional fallout. No, thank you. Not to mention I'm allergic to him.
Well, see, that gives you the reason to have the cat outside. Just put a heat lamp out in the hobo shack, and then...
Oh, yeah. You power a heat lamp with your solar powered off grid system. Those things are energy sucks, dude. Nope, that's a no go.
They put off a lot of heat, enough for a little kitty to live outside.
Yeah, a little kitty can live with somebody else. That's what's going to happen there.
All right. Well, good luck with your mouse situation then, buddy.
Oh, I released him way far away from the cabin down by the creek, and
I'm sure he won't make it back.
Shut up.
On to Better at Life.
All right, man, you got
my Better at Life this week is for all the Seahawks fans out there defending Geno Smith. And I'll put guys like KJ Wright in that bundle too, because I was happy this week with some of the reaction being so strong. And I don't know from what segments necessarily, but there was enough to where it bothered enough people that they then began defending Geno Smith like wholeheartedly. And that's why I put KJ Wright in that situation. Like, he could not understand in his brain. He could not come up with a way to understand why people would be calling for Geno Smith to even be benched. Like, it made that little amount of sense to him. And then for other fans to come out and make videos. Gosh, I saw on Field Goals that they were breaking down one play where Geno Smith ran for 11 yards. JSN was kind of open on the sideline. He probably would have been able to hit him for a touchdown if the offensive line hadn't broken down. And had he been looking that way, he instead runs for a first down. And you know, the Field Goals article talking about how that was one of his worst decisions of the game. Then there was a fan reaction that went into depth about just how much it wasn't Geno's fault and how he made the right decision, complete with all these different graphics. So you had people on the radio, you had people on Seahawks fan blogs breaking this down, fighting over it. There was enough passion. It made me happy for the people, especially those of us who are Team Geno. And for all of you, you are better at life than Skip Bayless.
I agree. I saw Mookie Alexander on Field Goals had a poll, bench Geno, no, bench Geno, yes, or bench Geno, yes, if it continues to be bad. Right.
Right.
And 50% said no. And then the other two answers split about 25% equally for yes. And then yes, if he continues to play poorly. Right. So that shows you
that's what started this. I think that's what started some of this.
Yeah. I do think that the portion of the fan base that is adamant that he needs to go or be benched or draft 5 quarterbacks or whatever it is that you guys want to do, you're very much in the minority. Like, you're definitely in that 25% at best. So, yeah, all the people that, standing up for our quarterback, I like it.
Well, and I don't know if 25% still seems like a large segment. I think that there's a portion too that would just choose not to interact with a poll because like they feel like it's that silly of a question.
Yeah, I think that's all sound logic by you. So come on, man, have some belief in your quarterback. You know who I do have all the belief in the world in, Brandon? The little flockers.
Yeah. All
the little flockers, especially all you little flockers over there in Europe and in London. I got a video chat call from John Davidson, the Bard, at halftime during the game. And he was sitting at the pub that we had all met at when we were there last, Brandon. Now, they couldn't hear what I was saying. They were breaking up, a little bit here and there. Was a lot of hand gestures and excited faces, but that delighted me to no end. You guys are amazing. So cool to see you all there together, and to know that this show had a little something to do with that is that gives me all the fizz, man. It really does. You guys are better at life than Skip Bayless.
And on that note, I got some sound from Dave Bloomquist, a.k.a. Hawk Van Dyke, formerly Hong Kong Hawk. And what do you say we play out some audio as we close out the show, starting with this call from Dave.
Hello, Brandon. Hello, Adam. This is Hawk Van Dyke. I'm here with all of my friends. We're in a pub.
Catfish!
We're in a pub getting ready to go to the game. So here's who I have with me.
Another catfish! Dick Van Dyke accent. Hello, this is John Davison, the Bard, and I don't speak like Adam says.
This is Ross, Broncos country, let's ride.
Craig Humphrey, Catfish the Rams.
Hi, this is Barry the WC. Used to be Barry the Redskin till that was banned. And just say hello to all the Seahawks fans out there.
Hi, this is Dan, Catfish the Whiners.
We wish more of you could be with us here. We're having a great time. We're getting ready for the game. And everybody, we've just got one more thing to say. Go Hawks!
Go Hawks!
Go Hawks!
Right now, aviation companies like Lufthansa Technik are using virtual reality training to help their mechanics practice crucial engine maintenance skills, helping them prepare for real repairs. Learn more at meta.com/metaverseimpact.